Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this discussion on the Protecting the Right to Organize, or PRO Act, the labor movement's top priority for the 117th Congress. My name is Graham Trainer, and I'm proud to serve as president of the Oregon AFL-CIO, representing over 300,000 working Oregonians across all sectors of Oregon's diverse economy. And we have an incredible panel this afternoon of leaders full of expertise to dive in to the Protecting the Right to Organize Act and provide an abundance of information here in just a few moments. But before we get started, I wanted to just say a few words about the significance of this moment and this campaign to rewrite our nation's woefully outdated labor laws by passing this game-changing bill. In the labor movement, we know that our efforts to give more people the ability to experience the transformational power of forming or joining a union is about so much more than just wages and benefits. Now, there's no question that raising the standard of living for workers through a union contract is one of the single most effective ways to address economic inequality. But when more workers are able to form and join unions, our communities are stronger and more resilient, our economy is more equitable, our public safety net and worker protection laws are stronger, and our democracy is better off. You'll hear from our esteemed panelists today about the significance of this campaign and the details of how this bill will put more power back in the hands of workers at such a critical time. We know that corporate America has spent the last 80 years chipping away at our nation's labor laws. By flipping this script with the PRO Act, a script that has kept workers with too little power on the job for far too long, it will provide the single most comprehensive worker empowerment change we've seen since the Great Depression. I know that the Oregon labor movement is also up to the task of making this game-changing bill a reality, in particular because of what I've seen over the last few weeks leading up to the House vote on the bill last Tuesday. After having one of our Democratic members of Oregon's House delegation vote against the PRO Act when it came up for a vote last year, who was one of only a few Democrats nationally to do so, compounded by that same member voting against the Biden administration's American Rescue Plan the first time it came to the House floor a few weeks ago, our movement kicked into high gear to hold that member of Congress accountable to the working families in that district. From direct actions to targeted digital strategies to significant earned media and press interest, our movement here in Oregon came together to make sure that all of our Democratic leaders stand with working families when the final question is called. And I am proud to report that it worked. While nearly all of Oregon's Democratic congressional delegation have stood with us from day one as original co-sponsors of the bill, and two of those champions are, of course, with us today, every single Democratic member of Oregon's House delegation ended up voting for the PRO Act last week, as well as the final vote on the incredibly pro-worker American Rescue Plan. And I'm here to tell you, collective action works, and that proves it. And our campaign here in Oregon is far from over. Now, I'm just going to say a few words about today's format. I'm going to first introduce each panelist, who will give brief opening remarks. Then through a series of questions, the panelists will then give us an overview of the need for change, the details of the PRO Act, and we'll provide the latest updates on the timeline for this legislation. We'll then hear what we need to do to be prepared to take advantage of this historic reform in Oregon and across the country once we cross the finish line. We will post several opportunities for actions that demonstrate exactly what it means to be union, along with this video of today's briefing on www.orafl-cio.org/PROACT. And we will, of course, end with a call to action after we conclude today's briefing. Unfortunately, today's format won't allow for questions from the audience, but we are really hopeful that this incredible panel will give you a much deeper understanding and appreciation for the importance of this campaign and this bill. Again, we appreciate you joining us and look forward to this critical conversation. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. And first up is AFL-CIO Secretary Treasurer Liz Shuler. Secretary Treasurer Shuler, the leadership team, and the staff at the National AFL-CIO have been working around the clock for months to do what we do best, to use our labor movement structures, our shared vision, and our perseverance to pass this historic legislation as the cornerstone to the labor movement's Workers' First agenda. This leadership is so impressive, so important, and so urgently needed. And here in Oregon, we have an added benefit because we get to call Secretary Treasurer Shuler our Secretary Treasurer, because as you know, her family, her roots, her passion for our movement, and her belief that the labor movement is the greatest vehicle for achieving social and economic justice, that all started right here in Clackamas County, Oregon. So let's give a big, warm Oregon welcome home to our Secretary Treasurer and my friend Liz Shuler.
Yay! Thank you so much, Graham. Oh my gosh. Anytime I can be with Oregonians, I'm there. So I appreciate you including me tonight. And Graham, I just want to say you have stepped up on this issue. And the solidarity that you've shown on organizing campaigns, even outside Oregon, is remarkable. So I just want to thank you for your leadership and the amazing team that you've assembled at the state Fed. And you floor me, Oregon Labor, because what Graham was talking about, the mobilizations that you've put together, are nothing short of incredible. And I know on International Women's Day, there were some demonstrations outside a particular congressional office. And I think it was over 100 activists on a dime, on the phone, in person. So I just want to say thank you for your stellar work. And I'm so honored to be here with two rock solid labor friends who I'm grateful that are in DC, because I'm an Oregonian in exile in DC, and I get to work with them. So thank you to Congresswoman Bonamici and Senator Merkley for being champions for us, for standing up for us in Congress by supporting tonight's topic, the PRO Act. And the list goes on of the support that you give us every single day. So thank you so much. And I think you see that this issue isn't just about union members. This bill will help so many workers from every sector, from every state, from essential frontline workers who are living on poverty wages to highly paid software engineers in big tech who will be able to join a union. So it really does go beyond just the labor movement. And we all know it shouldn't take an act of heroism to join a union. No one should have to risk their job to stand together with their coworkers. And the National Labor Relations Act, as you know, encourages collective bargaining. And it became law in 1935. And, you know, that seems like a long time ago, right? Before the phonograph was invented, before super glue and diet soda and the Slinky were invented. Never mind artificial intelligence and big data, where we are today. So in 80 years, the NLRA has been hollowed out. Corporations, as Graham said, have made an art of union busting. And we know that the wealthy and the powerful have chipped away at our rights, and they're misclassifying workers as independent contractors. They're exploiting us now through surveillance. They're hoarding the gains of technology, and putting shareholder profits above safety. So now, in the middle of the worst public health crisis in a century, we're seeing widespread economic hardship. There's a crisis of racism and gender violence. We are at a critical point, and we have a generational opportunity to restore our rights and reclaim our power by updating labor laws for this century. And the most important progressive issues really do intersect with the labor movement. So just imagine the progress we're going to make for civil rights, racial and environmental justice, gender equity, and the power for the 99% when we lift up millions of workers by passing the PRO Act.
Awesome. It's always a treat to have you back home with us, Liz, even if it's virtually. Thanks so much for those words. Now, our next guest, it's always a real treat for me to introduce our Senator, Jeff Merkley. Whether it was his work as Speaker of the Oregon House when he prioritized a strong pro-union agenda, and I might add that that included the public sector majority sign-up organizing law, a law that is now helped tens of thousands of Oregon workers form their union with a more fair and balanced set of rules. And that was after taking back pro-worker control of the chamber, or his 99% voting record with the AFL-CIO during his time in the United States Senate. Oregon workers can continue to be proud to have a champion like him in Congress and the United States Senate. Every time he has a choice to make between supporting corporate America or working America, Senator Merkley always stands with us. And I'm proud to introduce our friend and true champion for working people, U.S. Senator Jeff Merkley. Welcome.
Graham, thank you so much. And so good to be here with Liz and Suzanne and all of you who are fighting to make the world better for America's workers. I think at moments we can go, wow, we're in so much a better place than last year. Trump is not in the Oval Office. Instead of pro-union, pro-worker, we've got Joe Biden in the Oval Office. What an incredible change. And McConnell is not the majority leader of the Senate. McConnell, who prides himself on killing everything that will make the world better for ordinary people, isn't in charge. So that's a beautiful thing. And we have inoculations going on. We just passed this amazing bill, the reconciliation, the COVID-19 bill, that is probably the biggest investment in ordinary Americans since the Great Depression, on healthcare, on housing, on education, on jobs, taking on checks in the pocket and shots in the arm, and open signs on Main Street America, trying to help out small businesses. So it's a beautiful thing. But then there's this other part where we're still in a terribly difficult place. I've been holding conversations this morning with different unions around Oregon, and those strategies that Liz was talking about to keep people from organizing, the intimidation, the professional organizing consultants who come in to stop workers from organizing. I mean, this act, the Protect the Right to Organize, I almost think it should be like restore the right to organize, because quite frankly, it has been so assaulted. And the result is that in my lifetime since getting out of high school, so we're getting close to 50 years on that, and I don't know how that happened, but the state of workers has been level or declining, while the wealth at the top has just ballooned. And that wealth at the top changes the character of our nation, because it is deployed through reams of lawyers, through reams of lobbyists, through huge amounts of media campaigns to reframe issues, and all kinds of consultants, all kinds of social media presence, all about retaining power for the powerful. And this act is about retaking power for ordinary Americans, for working Americans. It's the right to organize. It's the ability to hold employers accountable for violating the rules, because when they go across the line, which they do all the time, they get nothing but a slap on the wrist. So it's simply the cost of doing business while they exploit workers across our country. And then third, free and fair union elections. So this would be a massive, massive success. We have to get it done. We have to get it done this year, 2021.
Thank you, Senator. Always inspiring to have you with us. And next up, our final panelist, Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici, who represents the 1st Congressional District of Oregon, which includes Washington, Yamhill, Clatsop, and Columbia counties, and part of Multnomah County. And from her time as a state legislator, helping to pass the nation's first ban on the abusive captive audience meetings we see used by employers during organizing campaigns, to her leadership role on the PRO Act in this Congress and the last in the U.S. House Committee on Education and Labor, Congresswoman Bonamici has understood throughout her career in public service the value that unions play in the economy, in dismantling gender and racial inequities in the workplace, and labor's role in rebuilding from the devastating impacts of the pandemic. It's my pleasure to introduce a leader with a steadfast commitment to unrigging the rules of the economy and making it easier for more workers to experience, again, the transformational power of joining together in a union. Welcome, Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici.
Well, thank you so much, Graham and Liz and Jeff. It is such an honor to be in this fight with you and to celebrate. We have a lot of work ahead, but we can celebrate the PRO Act passing the House and the American Rescue Plan, which we are seeing already positive results in our communities, and what a difference it is making. As Jeff was saying, a pro-labor bill, but also a bill that's going to help us get through the other side of the pandemic and come out stronger. I am so proud to serve as a leader on the Education and Labor Committee, where I have been for quite some time, and have for the whole time I've been here been a champion. And now the PRO Act, which we were able to work on and pass in the last Congress, and pass again. I called on leadership to bring it up for a vote swiftly, because we know what a difference it is going to make. Thanks to your partnership, we did pass it in the House. It is, as you heard, the most significant workers' rights legislation to pass the House in more than 80 years. I liked, Liz, your list of what was happening 80 years ago. We know we need this legislation. And as you heard from that kind introduction from Graham and the Oregon legislature, I fought to ban captive audience meetings and unfair employer interference. And bringing that fight here to Congress, this legislation, the PRO Act, when we were putting it together and when we're working on it, I was thinking about the workers I have spoken with across Oregon and around the country, workers who want to join a union and want to have a voice on the job, but there are barriers that their corporate bosses are putting up in the way. Now, to have a voice on the job is so important. And I want to tell you that one of the people I was thinking about was my son, Andrew, who just organized his workplace with AFSCME. And I tell you, it has already made a difference in the working conditions and raising standards overall. Proud mom, but I am proud of his involvement, but also proud of the PRO Act passing the House. And I know, as you heard from both Jeff and Liz, that unions are important for all workers, not just for members. They result in higher wages, benefits, and working conditions, and raise standards overall, and make a difference in our workplaces and in our communities. So I know Senator Merkley is working to get this a really critical legislation passed through the Senate. Then we'll have a real celebration of the PRO Act being signed into law. Fortunately, we have President Joe Biden, a pro-labor president. So thank you so much for this opportunity to celebrate, but also to recognize we're part of the way there. We're going to work with you and fight to get this all the way through and signed into law.
Great. Thanks so much, Congresswoman. Glad you could join us today. So my first question goes to Liz. So give us a little bit more background on the current state of the National Labor Relations Act and really what it's like for workers on the ground who want to form a union. I think this really speaks to the importance of the PRO Act.
Absolutely. And I look these days through the lens of the Amazon organizing campaign that's going on right now in Bessemer, Alabama. It is not fair to get fired for going to the bathroom. In the year 2021, in the United States of America, right? That should be a given. But it's not. And that is one of a number of a whole litany of things at workplaces like Amazon that don't have a union. And I don't know if you saw this week, a woman named Jennifer Bates, a Black woman who's organizing at the Amazon warehouse in Alabama. She testified before a Senate budget hearing. And she said, you're constantly being watched and monitored. And they seem to think you are another machine. And it just captures it so perfectly because Amazon is collecting data on workers through scanners, through wristbands, thermal cameras, because heaven forbid too many workers congregate at one time. There's like a heat map going on. How far you walk, how long you're in the bathroom. Every move of the wrist is monitored and recorded, and it is absolutely dehumanizing. And where does the data go, right? It goes into an automated management system, and this system can issue warnings. It can actually fire workers, all with no human interaction, right? So that is a big reason why workers are organizing. They want to be able to have a conversation, right? And protection so that they won't be penalized because an automated management system said they should, right? They want more than just a one-way relationship with a management app. So voting's underway right now with nearly 6,000 workers, mostly Black workers. I think it's 90% of the workers are Black. It's one of the biggest union drives in the South in a very long time. So this is historic. And of course, Amazon is pulling out all the stops with its union busting campaign. Literally, you may have heard this, to prevent union organizers from talking to workers while they're stopped. The company actually had the length of the traffic light outside the warehouse changed, right? So they're doing all the things that Senator Merkley just talked about, right? Management is holding captive audience meetings. There's Amazon's weird relationship with the bathroom. There's, very few breaks that people can take in a 4-story warehouse, it stretches the distance of multiple football fields. Workers are actually being punished for taking the time they need to use the bathroom. And then if you do risk it, now on the inside of the bathroom stall, I hate to talk too much about bathrooms, but it is literally the center of this campaign. They are staring at Amazon's anti-union flyers in the bathroom stall. They're decorating the whole warehouse with propaganda. And all of this is legal right now. The union busting, the dehumanizing use of technology. Amazon can't pay its workers the $2 an hour hazard pay, but they can pay the union busting consultants $3,200 a day, right? And this isn't just Amazon, but I think it showcases exactly what we're talking about in real time here. And it's not just big tech either. We know this is system-wide across all sectors. But this is a fundamental issue of power and inequality. And inequality is skyrocketing, as we've heard also in this session. And it's greater than at any point in our history. And why is that? It's because too few people have unions. And we've been robbed of our rights to act collectively without fear, without the fear of retaliation. And 40 years ago, we like to talk about this a lot, it's worth repeating, the gap between CEO pay and worker pay 40 years ago was 42 to 1. What is it now? 350 to 1, right? So workers need economic leverage to have our voices heard and to balance the scales before they break. And workers like Jennifer shouldn't have to fear the worst for organizing a union. So we need to pass the PRO Act.
Thanks so much, Liz. I really appreciate you highlighting this really relevant, timely campaign in Bessemer. All eyes are on Bessemer, and it was heartened to see the worker side of the story told in the Budget Committee recently. So next, the question is for Congresswoman Bonamici. Oregon's unions obviously applaud, and we've said this over and over. We applaud your leadership in helping us get the PRO Act across the finish line in the House, both in the last Congress and in this Congress. And we also just want to take a moment to thank you for joining today, despite a really busy schedule. I know you have to hop off just after today's, just this response. So, but did want to give you a chance to answer a quick question. Tell us a little bit about how the PRO Act will modernize the weaknesses in our laws. I think you've had a front row seat from your time as a state legislator and now your time in Congress. But tell us a little bit more about how this modernizes those weaknesses in our laws, as Liz just highlighted.
Yeah, absolutely, Graham. And thank you for the opportunity. And as Liz was saying, the playing field is not level at all. And that's the purpose of the PRO Act, to level the playing field. Because when the PRO Act becomes law, workers can push for the changes they want to see without that fear and without retaliation. So it's going to strengthen the right of workers to form a union and negotiate. And here's how it's going to do that. It's going to hold employers accountable, finally, if they illegally retaliate or fire workers for being involved in union organizing. It's going to have substantive and enforceable penalties for unlawful tactics that employers take to interfere with elections or workers organizing. Union rights shouldn't be enforced differently than other workplace rights, but they are currently. The decision to form a union will be between the employees, the NLRB, and employers can't interfere. So it's also going to ban captive audience meetings like we did in Oregon, and like we're seeing, and I remember that was challenged and the ban was upheld, but we're seeing it now, as Liz said, with Amazon. There will be mechanisms to encourage reaching a contract. It's going to prevent employers from stalling first contract negotiations to try to get workers frustrated with the union. So that's going to be gone. We have to have this balance in our economy. And as Liz was saying, everything is so interrelated. One important thing that the PRO Act will do, it is going to override what's called right to work laws in the private sector. I call them right to work for less laws. And that means that fair share contracts are going to be up to the union and the workers. And the government's not going to be standing in the way of a decision between private unions and private employees. It's going to restore fairness in our economy by closing those loopholes that allow employers to misclassify workers as well. So it is opening up the rights, but then also having and strengthening the rights, but also having the accountability in the enforcement that has been so woefully lacking. So two pieces, the expanding the rights and also having the enforcement and accountability, and that's leveling the playing field. That's what the PRO Act will do. I'm very much looking forward to working with Senator Merkley and the senators to get that over the finish line on the Senate side and celebrating with all of you. And we are going to see what a difference it's going to make for working families in Oregon and across the country. So thank you so much. And I do apologize I have to leave, but thank you for all your advocacy, and look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Thanks again, Congresswoman. Great to see you. Thanks for joining. Okay, the next question is for Senator Merkley. So we're proud to have the support of both yourself and Senator Wyden as original co-sponsors on the bill. But share a little bit more about what the current status of the PRO Act is in the United States Senate and what it's going to take to get this to President Joe Biden's desk.
So here we are with the PRO Act having passed the House. The desk in the Oval Office is awaiting the bill, but what stands in the way? The U.S. Senate. And let me turn the clock back to 2009 when I first went to the Senate. I campaigned on card check when I ran for the U.S. Senate, and it was never voted on in the Senate. I proceeded to support the backup, which was an arbitration for first contracts. You actually organize the union now. Can you get to that first contract? We never voted on it. We have gone, and as Trumpka put it, the head of AFL-CIO, he put it, it's been 50 years in which we haven't passed anything really to make the workers' rights better. And as Liz was pointing out, 80 years since we had anything of this substantial nature. So here we are in a situation where workers have really been squeezed and pressed and abused more and more and more as corporations got more and more powerful, more and more wealth on the top, and we're fighting back. And it's really the right moment. But in the Senate, we have the narrowest of margins to get the work done. We have a 50-50 Senate, 50 Democrats, 50 Republicans, and a vice president who's Democratic. So that gives us the majority, the ability to control the agenda, put bills on the floor. But we will probably not get a single Republican vote because they are being pushed from the pro-corporate side. That's what they ran on. That's who they're supported by. That's where their campaign money comes from. It's the party that's really representing more power for the powerful, more wealth for the wealthy, more privilege for the privileged. We're fighting instead for working America. And it's reflected in the bill we just passed, the reconciliation, the COVID-19 bill. But now we've got to get 50 votes all on board for this massively important reform. But here's the challenge. Let's say we have those 50 votes and we go to the floor of the Senate, and then under current Senate rules, we have to get 60 votes. Now, it's hard to understand why it is that tax cuts for the rich only require 50 or 51 votes. Why is it that putting a Supreme Court justice in office on the Supreme Court who fights for the most powerful in this nation under the Federalist Society tradition only took 50 or 51 votes? But fighting for ordinary workers, get a fair share of the pie, get paid an honest wage for an honest work, you have to get 60 votes, which means you need 10 Republicans. And Mitch McConnell has no intention to allow a single Republican to vote for this bill, even if one of them in their heart knew it was the right thing to do, which means that in the Senate, we have to find a way around the filibuster. And that is extremely important. And it's not as often portrayed this great Senate tradition. No, it wasn't a Senate tradition. And it for 80 years did nothing but block Americans from their civil rights, basically keep Black Americans from having political power or the right to vote. So it is drenched in Jim Crow history. And that's what Obama called it when he talked at John Lewis's funeral. We need to find a path past the filibuster. I've been immersed in that battle, and that essentially will free up the ability to get the PRO Act done. It will also free up the ability to get the For the People Act that stops voter suppression and dark money and gerrymandering. all of which are very important to workers because those are three forms of massive corruption designed to keep the reins of power in the hands of the wealthy and powerful rather than the people. So this is the year that we have a chance with this narrowest of margin to break through. Now, only 4 years out of the last 40 has there been a Democratic president, a Democratic House, and a Democratic House and Senate, and 3. So think of it this way. You get a shot maybe 1 out of every 10 years. Well, this is our 1 out of 10 years. We cannot fail to get this done. Please send the message to every House member, to every senator, that you believe, and this is the moment, we have to get it done. No excuses from Senate leadership saying, we're sorry Mitch McConnell stopped us because he had a veto. Mitch McConnell tore down the filibuster for his ability to get tax cuts for the rich. He tore down the filibuster to put his Federal Society members in the Supreme Court. Do we not have the guts to be as determined to get our things passed for the people as Mitch McConnell did for the powerful? We have to get it done. There can be no excuses. Failure is not an option. And thank you all for joining this incredibly important battle for the future of our nation, the future of workers.
Thank you, Senator. I'm fired up. I hope our audience is as well. Really appreciate it. Appreciate your leadership. And I know you spoke to the leaders of the AFL-CIO at the Executive Council just a few weeks ago, or maybe a week ago. And I really appreciate this conversation around unrigging the rules of the Senate and unrigging the rules of the economy. So thanks again. So final question is for you, Secretary Treasurer Shuler. What are the next steps once the PRO Act passes, and what can we do to ensure that all workers have a voice in the workplace?
Yes, and thank you, Senator Merkley, by the way. We share your passion around the filibuster rules, and it's something we need to continue to talk about and get outside the beltway, right? So thank you for raising that. In terms of making sure all workers have a voice in the workplace after we pass the PRO Act, which I love that, the way you framed that. This is our challenge, because once it passes, the hope is that the fear goes away. And I think about the campaign that I was involved in at my local union, IBEW Local 125. Shout out to my siblings at Local 125. We were organizing clerical workers at PGE back in the day, and the fear held us back. And now I'm thinking about the future of work and how technology is starting to transform work and the different types of work that are emerging, and the different workers that are, this emerging labor force. And like on-demand platform workers, right? The gig workers. And there has been such a rise in these platforms. I'm sure you're familiar with the names of Uber and Lyft and Instacart and TaskRabbit. These companies are using algorithms, the data run technology, to nickel and dime workers. And you probably have heard of DoorDash. They claim their workers make $18.54 per active hour. But actually, after expenses, the take-home pay, I read a study, said the take-home pay is actually per real hour is like $1.45. So that's the way these companies get away with this, is by misclassifying their workers as independent contractors. So they get less pay, little if any benefits, no job security, all while doing the same work as a full-time employee, right? And this is a racial justice issue as well, because Black and brown workers are disproportionately represented in these poorly paid, highly surveilled roles. And so the PRO Act will protect the rights of workers to organize for actual independent contractors and freelancers. A lot of people are saying, oh, well, this is going to take the ability for people who don't want to be in a union. If you're an independent contractor, it's going to really upset the apple cart here. The law would have no impact for actual independent contractors and freelancers who do not want to form a union, despite the disinformation that's being spread. And I just want to be clear about that. So what it is going to do is make it possible for musicians and journalists and graphic designers and people who have traditionally been shut out because of the labor law to now have a door open to forming a union if they want it, right? And so in terms of data and algorithms, I just wanted to put a little plug in for our Technology Institute. We just established this at the AFL-CIO to really think through these issues and come up with the policies and the guardrails as technology starts transforming work. And it's going to help us bargain too around technology. So I'm really excited about that. Just wanted to put a plug in that. But, you know, this is the thing we're thinking about. The people who are out of work and are worrying about what happens now, we want to be there for the people who want to get into new careers, start organizing those emerging industries that have no unions. And we want the labor movement to be front and center so that we can take, you know, the high demand, high growth careers into good jobs with good wages. And the economic recovery is going to require public investment. We need major infrastructure investments, including our sustainable energy infrastructure, which I want to thank Senator Merkley for his plan to actually make tax breaks for renewables contingent on high labor standards and civil rights laws. And that's the kind of thing we need. And the only way we get there is if workers have the power to make those demands and work in concert with our policymakers and our elected officials. So last point, care infrastructure. I'm sorry, the Congresswoman had to leave. Care infrastructure is a major part of infrastructure because care work makes all other work possible. But these jobs are often unpaid or underpaid and outside the regulations and social protections. So I just wanted to say, we are demanding the policies that are going to recognize the full value of care work and make the jobs well-paying union jobs. And to get all of this done, what is it we keep coming back to, right? We need to organize like we did during the election in 2020. We need to, as soon as this call is over, jot down what the union difference means to you, and then take that and share it on all of our social media channels and show that when people have unions, their lives improve, prosperity is shared. And I can't wait to hear those stories. I'm going to be looking for them. But that's what we need to do, is get the groundswell moving to pass the PRO Act.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Liz. Give Liz and Senator Merkley a big virtual thank you and applause. And again, thanks so much for the entire panel for joining us today. And thanks to the audience for tuning in. Once again, we'll post several opportunities for actions that demonstrate exactly what it means to be union along with this video on our website, oraflcio.org/proact. Now I'd like to direct everyone's attention to a couple actions that should pop up on the screen to call and thank Oregon's members of Congress, one, for their support. And if you live in Oregon's 2nd Congressional District, to ask why your congressman voted against the working families in his district last week in the PRO Act. And also, please post to social media, as Liz talked about, using the hashtag PROAct, including a brief personal story about what the difference having a union has made in your life. Again, thank you so much for this incredible panel. Be ready for continued actions and have a great afternoon, everyone.